containing an attempt to recover and reconstitute the lost origins of the myths and mysteries, types and symbols, religion and language, with Egypt for the mouthpiece, and Africa as the birthplace.
You know, there's a specific feeling you get when you're watching a really intense, high-stakes movie, maybe a political thriller or a gritty war drama. And right in the middle of the most serious scene, something completely absurd happens in the background.
Right.
Like the hero is giving a dying speech, and behind him, a guy in a clown suit just, walks past the window.
The glitch in the Matrix. The thing that breaks the immersion because it just doesn't belong there.
Exactly. And usually when that happens in a movie, it's a mistake. It's an extra who wandered onto the set. But when it happens in an ancient text, a text that has been pored over, copied, and recopied for 2,000 years, you have to assume it's not a mistake.
No, you can't.
You have to assume it's a signal.
A signal that requires a decoder ring, essentially.
And today, we are looking at the ultimate glitch in the New Testament. We are zooming in on 2 verses in the Gospel of Mark that have baffled scholars, theologians, and, well, just about any casual reader for centuries. We're talking about the arrest of Jesus in Gethsemane, a scene of absolute chaos and tragedy, and the sudden, bizarre appearance of the naked fugitive.
It is arguably the most puzzling vignette in the entire Bible. It appears only in Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. All scrub it from the record.
They just delete it.
They do. And on the surface, it adds absolutely nothing to the plot. But you look deeper, it might actually be the key to understanding the entire structure of the gospel.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We are going to try and figure out who this guy is. Is he a random neighbor? Is he the author? Or is he a symbol for something much, much bigger?
And to do that, we have brought 2 very heavy, very different stacks of research to the table.
It looks like it.
We have indeed. On one side of the table, we have what we can call the Greek lens. We'll be looking at the work of Dr. Dennis MacDonald, a heavyweight scholar who argues that this naked young man is a literary reference, a meme, if you will, borrowed directly from Homer's Odyssey.
So Jesus as the new Odysseus, that's a fascinating angle right there.
It changes everything about how you read the text.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the table, we have something even more radical.
Okay.
We have the Egyptian lens, primarily through the work of Gerald Massey. He's a 19th century poet and self-taught Egyptologist who argued that this isn't history at all. And it isn't just Greek literature. He argues it is historicized mythology derived from the ancient mysteries of Osiris and Horus.
So we are going to look at this naked guy through the eyes of a Greek literary critic and an Egyptian mystic. The stakes are pretty high here, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because depending on which lens you use, the Bible turns into a completely different kind of book.
Precisely. It moves us away from the simple history narrative, the idea that a guy just followed Jesus around with a notepad, and forces us to see the Gospels as a tapestry of ancient symbols. It's a collision of worlds. Jewish history, Greek literature, and Egyptian spirituality.
Well, let's fit right into the crime scene. Set the stage for us. We are in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 14. What is happening?
We are in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is the psychological breaking point of the Jesus narrative.
The absolute low point.
The lowest. It is late at night, likely pitch black aside from torches. Jesus has been praying in agony. His disciples, Peter, James, John, have failed him. They've fallen asleep 3 times.
He asked them for one thing, watch with me, and they couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it. And then the betrayer arrives. Judas steps out of the darkness, plants the kiss, and the chaos erupts.
Mark describes a mob with swords and clubs. It's a violent arrest.
It is. And the reaction of the disciples is total collapse. Verse 50 is just brutal in its brevity.
Yeah.
And they all left him and fled.
That's it.
The movement is over. The leader is taken. Everyone runs.
But then the camera doesn't cut away. It pans to the side. Verse 51. A certain young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth about his naked body.
Let's just pause on the Greek there because the words really matter.
Okay.
The term is Neaniskos. It means a young man, a youth. And he was wearing a sindon.
Sindon, that's a linen cloth.
Yes. But a sindon isn't just a rag. It implies a fine linen sheet. It's a quality piece of fabric.
So it's not like he just grabbed a dish towel.
Not at all. It's the kind of thing you might use as a night garment. or, and this will be crucial later, as a burial shroud.
A burial shroud. Okay, filing that away.
And Mark specifies he is wearing it epigymnou over his naked body. He has no tunic, no undergarments, just the sheet.
Okay, so this guy is following the arrest party. And then verse 52 gives us a punchline.
And they seized him, but he left the linen cloth and fled naked.
And that's it.
That's it. He vanishes from the narrative. The soldiers are left holding an empty sheet, and a naked man sprints off into the dark olive groves.
It feels like a blooper. I mean, seriously, why is this here? For a long time, the standard church answer was, oh, that's Mark. Right.
The Alfred Hitchcock cameo theory, yes.
Exactly. The idea that Mark, the author, was actually there that night, maybe he was living in a house nearby, heard the noise, ran out in his bedsheet, and got caught up in the scuffle.
So he writes himself into the story as a sort of I was there signature, a personal touch.
It's a charming idea, but it feels a little too convenient.
It is entirely speculative. There is zero evidence for it in the text. And more importantly, if you treat it as just a personal anecdote, you miss the possibility that this character is doing heavy lifting for the story's structure.
Right. If it's just Mark saying, this crazy thing happened to me, it's trivia. But if it's a symbol, it's theology.
Exactly. And that is where Dr. Dennis MacDonald comes in. He looks at this scene and says, I don't think this is a historical memory of a guy losing his clothes. I think this is mimesis.
Okay, let's unpack mimesis. It sounds like mimic, but in a scholarly context, what are we talking about?
In the ancient world, especially in Greco-Roman literature, originality didn't mean making up a story out of thin air. That was actually considered cheap.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Real literary skill was demonstrated by taking a classic, the Bible of the Greek world, which was Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, and rewriting it, imitating it, remixing it.
So it's like a director today making a movie that is clearly riffing on Star Wars or The Godfather. If you know the original, you appreciate the new one more.
Precisely. It's a rivalrous imitation. You invoke the old master to show that your hero is better, or that your story is the new definitive version. MacDonald argues that Mark is actively constructing his gospel as a prose epic to rival Homer. He wants to show that Jesus is a greater hero than Odysseus.
A greater hero than Odysseus. That is a huge claim. So if Mark is riffing on the Odyssey, who is the naked guy? Because I don't remember a naked fugitive in the Odyssey.
He is there, though you might have missed him because the context is different. MacDonald identifies the naked young man as a literary parallel to a character named Elpenor.
Elpenor. Okay, remind us who he is.
Elpenor is a tragic, slightly pathetic figure in the Odyssey. He is the youngest member of Odysseus's crew.
A rookie.
The rookie, exactly. And Homer describes him as not very valiant in war, nor steady in mind.
So he's not the sharpest tool in the shed.
Not at all. The setting is the island of Circe, the sorceress. Odysseus and his men have been there for a year, feasting, drinking, living in luxury.
Living the good life.
The very good life. Finally, the time comes to leave. They have to descend into Hades, the underworld, to get directions home.
A descent into death, a classic epic trope.
Exactly. The crew is bustling, getting the ship ready. Elpenor, however, had gotten drunk the night before.
Uh-oh.
To get some fresh air, he climbed up onto the roof of Circe's palace and fell asleep.
I feel like I can see this happening. I think I've known an Elpenor or two.
We all have. When he hears the shouting and the noise of the departure in the morning, he wakes up in a panic. He forgets where he is. He forgets to use the ladder. He steps off the roof, falls headfirst, breaks his neck, and dies.
Wow. That is a rough way to go.
It is. But here is the crucial connection to Mark. In the rush to leave, Odysseus leaves Elpenor's body behind, unburied.
They just leave him there.
They leave him. The crew sails to Hades, and the first soul Odysseus meets in the underworld is Elpenor.
The guy he just left behind.
The ghost of Elpenor. And he pleads with him, "Do not leave me unwept and unburied." He represents a failed transition. He didn't make the journey with the hero. He was left behind in a state of shame.
Okay, so let's map this onto Mark 14. We have a young man in both stories.
Yes. Elpenor is the youngest. Mark's figure is a Neaniskos, a youth.
And they both appear at this critical moment.
A crucial transition point, right before the hero descends into the realm of death. Odysseus is going to Hades. Jesus is going to his trial and execution.
And both involve a failure.
Massive failure. Elpenor fails because of drunkenness and stupidity. In Gethsemane, the disciples fail Jesus. They fall asleep, just like Elpenor slept on the roof.
Right. The sleeping parallel is huge.
And when the moment of truth comes, they flee.
Yeah.
MacDonald argues that the naked young man is a personification of the disciples' failure.
So instead of listing every disciple running away, Mark gives us this one symbolic figure who is literally stripped of everything.
He is stripped of his dignity. He leaves his covering behind. Just as Elpener's body was left behind unburied, this young man leaves the Sinden behind. He is the anti-hero. The text is signaling to the reader, we are entering the underworld now, and the disciples aren't coming with us.
That makes so much sense structurally. It explains why he's anonymous. He's not a person, he's a condition. The condition of shame and failure.
And MacDonald points out linguistic echoes, too. The specific Greek verbs used for fleeing in Mark are rare, but they appear in the Odyssey in scenes of panic and flight. Mark is borrowing the mood of the epic. He's setting a very specific literary tone.
Now, before we pivot to Egypt, we have to clear something up. Because if you go online and search for naked young man Mark, you don't just get Homeric scholarship.
No, you don't.
You get some, let's call them spicy theories.
You're referring to the secret Mark controversy, or the Morton Smith hypothesis.
Yeah. I've seen videos and articles claiming that this scene is evidence of a secret gay ritual or a drug cult. People like David Hillman or Ammon Hillman argue that the linen cloth was used to strain drugs, or that the nakedness implies pederasty, that Jesus and this boy were involved in some kind of sexual initiation.
It is a very popular theory on the internet because it is sensational. It suggests a cover-up by the church, a hidden history.
A sort of Da Vinci Code reading.
Exactly. But we have to be rigorous here. MacDonald, who has spent 60 years analyzing Greek texts, is extremely dismissive of these theories.
What is his argument against them? Why is he so sure?
It comes down to the text itself. First, the word Neaniskos. The proponents of the pederasty theory often imply this word means a young boy, a child.
Right, to make it more scandalous.
Yes, but MacDonald points out that in the Greek literature of this period, authors like Xenophon or Polybius Neaniskos is a military term. Yes, it refers to a youth of warrior age, someone capable of bearing arms. We are talking late teens, 20s, a peer of the disciples. So the idea that this is a little boy collapses just on the dictionary definition.
Okay, that's a pretty strong rebuttal. And the drug stuff, the idea that the Sinden is a filter?
MacDonald argues there is simply no philological basis for it in the Gospel of Mark. The idea that a Sinden implies drug straining in this context is, in his view, a complete fantasy imposed on the text from outside.
It's eisegesis, not exegesis. Reading into the text, not out of it.
Precisely. He calls it inexcusable for classicists to ignore the obvious literary antecedent Homer in favor of a concocted drug cult theory that just isn't supported by the manuscript.
So we put the drug theory in the internet conspiracy bin.
For the purposes of this discussion, yes.
We keep the Homer theory on the desk.
Yeah.
But does Homer explain everything? It feels like it explains the structure, the shame, the failure.
It does. It explains the structure. It explains the young man archetype, but it doesn't fully explain the specific details of the clothing. Why the linen cloth specifically? Why is the nakedness emphasized as a state of fleeing? Elpener wasn't naked when he fell. He was just clumsy.
And that is the perfect bridge to our second lens. Because while MacDonald is looking at Greece, Gerald Massey is looking south to Egypt. And Massey says, you guys are missing the point. This isn't just literature. This is theology.
Enter the Egyptian lens. Gerald Massey is a fascinating character to bring into this. He wasn't an academic in the ivory tower sense.
Not at all.
He was a working-class radical, a druid, a poet, and he taught himself hieroglyphics.
The real-life goodwill hunting of Egyptology.
In a way, yes. And because he wasn't part of the academic club, he was willing to say things that were taboo. His main thesis in books like Ancient Egypt, The Light of the World, is that the Christian Gospels are not original histories. They are historicized myths.
Mythos became history.
Exactly. He believed that the scribes who wrote the Gospels took the ancient Egyptian wisdom, the mysteries of Osiris, Horus, and the journey of the soul, and misunderstood them. They took spiritual allegories and wrote them down as if they were events happening to a carpenter in Judea.
So in Massey's view, Gethsemane isn't a garden in Jerusalem, it's a mythical location.
Correct. Massey identifies Gethsemane with the Egyptian concept of the Pa, or more specifically, Amsmen.
Amsmen. It sounds ancient. What is it?
In the Egyptian ritual, what we commonly call the Book of the Dead, Amsmen is a place of preparation. It's a place of repose, but also of agony.
Repose and agony sounds like Gethsemane.
It does. In the myth, Horus, the son of the Father, the light of the world, suffers an agony there. He is watching for his father, Ra, the sun god, but he is attacked.
Attacked by who?
By Sut, or Set, the black boar. Sut is the archetype of darkness and betrayal. Massey argues that Sut is the prototype for Judas.
Wow.
In the Egyptian text, Sut and the associates of Sut attack Horus in the dark. Horus is wounded. He suffers bloody sweat or agony.
The parallels to the gospel scene are pretty striking. The agony, the betrayal, the mob.
Massey argues it's the exact same script. But here is where it gets wild. How does Massey explain our naked fugitive?
Yeah, does the Egyptian myth have a streaker?
Not a streaker, a soul. Massey zooms in on that word sindon, the linen cloth.
A burial shroud.
Exactly. He links the Greek word sindon to the Egyptian word shina, or shinti.
And what is a shina?
A shina is a linen garment, but specifically in the religious texts, it refers to the bandages of the mummy.
The mummy wrappings.
Yes, it is the garment of the dead, the garment of the physical earthly body that binds the spirit.
Okay, my brain is starting to buzz here. If the sindon is the mummy wrapping, then when the young man is wearing it, he is what? Dead.
He is incarnate. He's trapped in the physical world. In the Egyptian mystery tradition, the goal of death is for the soul, the manes, to liberate itself, to escape the body.
So the fleeing isn't cowardly running away from the soldiers.
No, it is a triumph. In the mystery language, fleeing naked means the spirit is stripping off the heavy material bandages, the shina, and escaping as pure spirit. He leaves the cloth behind in the hands of the soldiers who represent the forces of the material world and flies free.
That completely inverts the story. In the surface text, it looks like a guy getting humiliated. Haha, look, he lost his clothes.
Right, a moment of shame.
But in the subtext, Massey is saying it's a soul achieving liberation.
Exactly. But Massey's tragedy is that the gospel writer Mark didn't understand the symbol. Mark carnalized it. He took a metaphysical event, the soul leaving the body, and turned it into a physical event, a guy running out of his tunic.
It's like a game of telephone across civilizations. The Egyptian priest says, the soul casts off the shroud.
Yes.
The Greek scribe hears, the boy dropped his sheet.
That is the core of Massey's argument. The gnosis, the knowledge, was lost, leaving us with a weird, disjointed story that seems to have no purpose.
This idea of clothing as something negative, something to be discarded, that rings a bell with other traditions too, doesn't it? Even within Christianity.
It does, and this is where our two lenses, MacDonald's Greek lens and Massey's Egyptian lens, start to converge in a really interesting way.
Okay.
Both of them agree that the clothing is the problem. It represents a state that must be abandoned.
Let's look at the comparative dimensions here. MacDonald connects this nakedness to baptism.
Right. In the early church, baptism was a dramatic ritual. You didn't just get a little water sprinkled on your head.
No.
You stood at the edge of the water and you stripped off your old clothes.
Completely naked.
Often, yes. You took off the old man, the symbols of your status, your sin, your past life. You went into the water naked, like a newborn baby, to be born again. And when you came out, you were given a new white robe.
So MacDonald sees the naked fugitive as a sort of failed or interrupted baptism.
Or perhaps the pre-baptismal state. The state of shame that must be passed through. The young man strips off the old, but in Gethsemane, he flees into the dark. He hasn't reached the resurrection yet. He hasn't gotten his new robe.
And Massey, how does he view this garment of shame?
For Massey, drawing on Gnostic texts like the Pistis Sophia, the garment is the physical body itself.
It's not just symbolic clothing, it's our literal flesh.
It's our flesh. The Gnostics were very dualistic. They believed the spirit was pure light, but the body was a trap, a prison.
A prison made of meat and bone.
Exactly. The Pistis Sophia calls the body a lame, crooked, and blind garment. It talks about the soul needing to trample underfoot the garment of shame to enter the kingdom of light.
Trample underfoot. That sounds a lot like leaving the cloth in the dirt and running.
It's the same imagery. There is a phrase in the Gnostic books from the Gospel of Thomas as well. When you shall be stripped and not be ashamed. To be naked in this context isn't embarrassing. It means you have returned to the monad, the original pure spiritual state. You have taken off the tunic of the sphere.
The tunic of the sphere. That is a great band name, by the way.
It really is.
But it means the earthly body, the material prison.
Correct. So whether you are listening to MacDonald, who sees a literary allusion to the failed disciple Elpenor, or Massey, who sees the soul escaping the mummy,
the action is identical.
the action is identical. The covering is left behind. A transition is occurring. A shedding of the old self.
And this brings us to the payoff. Because if this young man was just a random extra in chapter 14, we could dismiss him. But he comes back.
This is the smoking gun for both theories. The character returns.
Mark doesn't explicitly say, and then the naked guy came back. But the literary echo is undeniable. Fast forward to Mark chapter 16. The women go to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body.
They expect to find a corpse. They expect to find the mummy. But the stone is rolled away. And what do they find inside?
Mark 16, verse 5. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe.
Note the Greek. Neaniskos, the same word.
The same word. And this can't be a coincidence.
It seems highly unlikely.
But now he's clothed, dressed in a white robe.
MacDonald argues this is the same literary character. Think of the symmetry. It's a perfect narrative arc.
A bookend.
In chapter 14, the moment of death and capture, he's naked, fleeing, shameful, stripping off the old life. In chapter 16, the moment of resurrection, he is seated, calm, and clothed in the white robe of the initiate.
He has graduated.
He has completed the journey. Remember Elpenor. Elpenor failed. He died and stayed in Hades, begging for a burial.
Right.
But this new Elpenor, this Markan figure, has gone through death and come out the other side. He has died and risen with Jesus.
That is such brilliant storytelling. Mark is showing us, through this background character, what discipleship actually looks like. You have to lose the old life to get the new robe.
Exactly. He's the model disciple. But now let's look at it through Massey's Egyptian lens.
Okay.
Because Massey sees this young man at the tomb and says, aha, that is the Ka.
Okay, glossary time. What is the Ka?
The Egyptians had a very complex psychology. They believed the human being was made of multiple parts. You had the Khat, that's the physical body, the corpse that gets mummified. That stays in the tomb.
Okay.
But you also have the Ka. The Ka is the spiritual double, the vital spark. It looks like you, but it's spirit. And you have the Sahu, the glorified spiritual body that can ascend to the stars.
So when you die, the Khat, the body, stays, but the Ka and Sahu are released.
Precisely. Massey points out that in Egyptian tomb architecture, there was often a specific chamber called the Ka chamber. The Ka could pass through matter. It wasn't bound by the sealed door of the tomb.
So Massey argues that the young man sitting in the empty tomb isn't an angel and isn't a random guy. He is the Ka of Jesus.
Yes, he is the spiritual double of the Christ, manifesting in the tomb while the physical body, the Khat, has been transmuted. Massey notes that in Egyptian art, the soul is often depicted as a naked man or a young man standing next to the mummy.
This actually solves a weird continuity problem in the Bible.
It does.
In Mark, there is one young man. But in Luke and Acts, suddenly there are two men.
Yes. In Acts 1, verse 10, at the Ascension, two men in white apparel appear. Massey connects this to the Egyptian gods Hu and Sa.
Hu and Sa, who are they?
They are attributes of the sun god Ra. They represent authority and intelligence. They accompany the sun god in his resurrection from Amenta, the underworld. They are the Watchers.
So these divine companions.
Right. And Massey argues that as the original Egyptian myth got fragmented and turned into these different gospels, these spiritual doubles got turned into angels or young men hanging out at the tomb. One gospel writer remembers one, another remembers two. The details get messy when you historicize a myth.
It is absolutely fascinating. Both MacDonald and Massey arrive at the same conclusion. This figure is not a historical bystander.
No.
He is a symbol of resurrection. But they get there by totally different roads.
One sees a literary remix of Homer, the other sees a fossil of Egyptian religion.
Which begs the question, why is Dennis MacDonald a respected professor with books published by Yale and Gerald Massey is?
Well, he's much more obscure, right? You find him in different kinds of bookshops.
You do. And that is a question of historiography and, frankly, academic bias. We have to talk about the Aryan model.
This is Martin Bernal's argument from his book Black Athena.
Right. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the era when biblical scholarship as a discipline was being invented, European academia was obsessed with race. They were building a narrative of Western civilization that had to be pure, white, and European.
So Greece was the hero. Greece was the cradle of civilization. Everything good came from Greece.
Exactly. They wanted to systematically disconnect Greece, and, by extension, Christianity, from Africa and the Semitic world. Egypt was African. It was viewed as inferior, static, or primitive.
So if you come along like MacDonald and say, hey, the gospel is based on Homer, the great Greek poet, the Academy says.
Bravo! That fits our model.
Right. That's brilliant. It connects the Bible to the Western canon. It's safe. It's palatable. But if you come along like Massey in the 19th century and say, actually, the Bible is recycled African mythology from the Nile Valley.
The Victorian Academy says absolutely not.
They shut him down. They marginalized him. Massey was dismissed as a fringe thinker. Not necessarily because his comparative evidence was wrong, but because his conclusion was culturally intolerable to the colonial mindset of his time.
So as modern readers, do we have to choose? Is it Homer or Egypt?
I don't think so. I really don't. And this is where the work of a scholar like Richard C. Miller comes in. He writes about resurrection and reception.
Reception theory. How people received and understood these stories.
Miller argues that ancient authors and readers were swimming in a soup of these symbols. They didn't have these rigid walls between Jewish, Greek, and Egyptian. The Mediterranean was a melting pot.
So an educated person in the 1st century might know Homer and know the Egyptian myths.
Absolutely. The Osiris mysteries were huge in the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
They were pop culture. They were everywhere. So Mark, our author, could be a guy trained in Greek rhetoric, using Mimesis from Homer, who is writing a story about a Jewish Messiah.
But he's using deep archetypal symbols.
Like the linen cloth and the spiritual body that have roots that go all the way back to the Egyptian soil.
It's a synthesis, a remix of a remix.
The naked young man is likely a residue of that earlier Egyptian charis mystery, the soul stripping off the body, but stylized by Mark using the literary tools of his day, which were Homeric.
That makes Mark a much more sophisticated writer than we usually give him credit for. He's weaving civilizations together in 2 verses.
He isn't just recording facts. He is crafting a theology of transformation.
Yeah.
He's a literary and spiritual genius.
So let's bring this home. We've gone from a bizarre streaker in the garden to the soul flying free of the mummy. What does this mean for us, for the person listening to this on their commute?
I think it shifts how we approach the text. If we stop trying to read the Bible like a newspaper, did this happen? What was the temperature? Who was standing where? And start reading it like a library of ancient wisdom, it opens up.
It invites us to see the young man not as a stranger, but as a mirror.
That is the Gnostic insight. The young man is the initiate. He is the listener. He is you.
We are the ones stuck in the linen cloth.
We are the ones wearing the garment of shame. The heavy constraints of the material world, the ego, the fear, the addiction to status. The story of the naked fugitive isn't about a guy losing his clothes 2,000 years ago. It is a challenge.
A challenge to do what?
To be willing to let go. To be grabbed by the soldiers of life, by crisis, by trauma, by change, and instead of fighting to keep our old covering, we leave it behind. We flee naked. We embrace the vulnerability.
Because you can't get to the white robe if you don't leave the linen sheet in their hands.
You cannot be clothed in the new life if you are still clutching the shroud of the old one. The young man shows us that the shame of the garden is just the precursor to the glory of the tomb.
That is a powerful image. The naked fugitive isn't a blooper. He's the model.
He is the soul in flight toward its own resurrection.
Wow. From Elpenor falling off a roof to the soul ascending to light. What a journey. Thank you for guiding us through the layers today.
It is always a pleasure to explore the detend.
And to you listening. Next time you feel stripped of something you thought you needed, a job, a relationship, a certainty, just remember, you might just be in the middle of your own Gethsemane moment, and the white robe might be waiting in the next chapter.
Keep seeking.
We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.
Containing an attempt to recover and reconstitute the lost origins of the myths and mysteries, types and symbols, religion and language, with Egypt for the mouthpiece and Africa as the birthplace.